We have the videos that that mosques across the country have post on their own websites. It's not like they're hiding it.
Anti-Semitism. There are so many different forms of anti-Semitism, and there are so many different levels of anti-Semitism. I, growing up in New York as a little child, has faced anti-Semitism from local hoodlums in the neighborhood. As a little child, I was already mugged when I was pushed down to the floor just for being Jewish. So there's various forms of anti-Semitism. Well, what about Muslim anti-Semitism? It's a different level of anti-Semitism, which Douglas Murray is willing to dissect and try to help us understand. What is the definition of Muslim anti-Semitism? Of course, it's a whole different flavor of anti-Semitism. Please listen into this conversation. Kindly subscribe to this channel so we can keep on growing this channel and bringing a little bit of light, pushing away a lot of darkness.
I want to ask you about a different form of anti-Semitism. So we've looked at the left-leaning version, the right-leaning version, but there's also the problem of Muslim anti-Semitism, which is the one form of racism you're not allowed to talk about, actually. You will be damned. I think it was Rod Little who said, we're now reaching the situation where it's Islamophobic to talk about anti-Semitism, because if you do, you'll be accused of bullying Muslims in Europe. How much of it, I mean, you've written about this at length. You've written about the strange death of Europe. You've written about some of these intersecting crises of our time. When I've gone on some of the anti-Israel demos over the past 20 months, strictly to observe them, not to take part, I have noticed a kind of unholy marriage between kind of bored bourgeois people from the leafy suburbs and young radical Muslims, radical Islamists, people who wear the keffiyeh and say, we want jihad, etc. How much of a problem do you think that anti-Semitism is becoming, and why are people so reluctant to grapple with it?
It really is, as you say, it is Islamophobic to mention Muslim anti-Semitism. And at some level, I think governments, police forces and others just decide this is a numbers game. There are more Muslims than there are Jews in the world and in countries like Britain, and therefore it's just easier. Give the Muslims their Islamophobia, rights, and it'll all go away as a problem. I think this is profoundly misguided.
Yeah.
Islam has an anti-Semitism problem from the roots of the religion, and it's undealt with. It's just not been dealt with. And, Christianity has had a long history of anti-Semitism. But if a Christian pastor or bishop or priest, anyone stood up in a pulpit and said, we must kill all the Jews, it would be front page news, and all the leadership of the church would denounce the person in question, and Absolutely. They would have no future in the church. By contrast, not just in the Middle East, in England today, we have the videos that mosques across the country have post on their own websites. It's not like they're hiding it. We'll do sermons calling for the end times and the destruction of the Jews. And if people don't think that's a problem for everyone, I don't know. I mean, obviously, as I say, a country like Britain is in a stage of denial because we have massive immigration. We've imported a lot of Islamic extremism. We've imported a lot of people who hate Jews and hate Britain. And I think that there is a general feeling like, let's allow them to continue hating the Jews, and we'll worry about the rest when we come to it. It's just all so misguided. Yeah. The theological fundaments of Islam have a deep anti-Semitism problem, and that's because the Jews were among the first people to reject the so-called revelation of Muhammad. They just said, no, we've got our traditions, we've got our book, we don't need yours. And the fact that Muhammad himself, the inventor of Islam, killed Jews with his own hands, is a problem. I mean, that's a big problem. Mm-hmm. And if you're a Muslim, and what do you do about that? A lot of people say that that's just not the case. they pretend that their own text, or a lot of people don't know, maybe. Certainly a lot of non-Muslims don't know that. But a lot of Muslims either deny that or will just try to shut it down, get around that difficult corner by saying Islamophobia.
Yeah.
I would urge them to do a different thing, which is to deal with it
Yeah.
and to get over it, to get past it. And it would be very good for the Muslim world as well, because if they decided to work with the Jewish state, for instance, in the Middle East, then you'd have a lot more success in the Middle East, and you'd have a lot less economic deprivation and much more, because all of the creativity and advances of the Jewish state could be shared with more with their neighbors. But it's a big problem for everyone else in the West, because, as I say, I mean, like, what do we think is going to happen? Really, what do we think is going to happen if the Muslim world doesn't address problems like that, and if the Muslim faith and Muslim faith leaders don't address problems like that? And they just don't. They deny it, and they prevaricate, and they push it away, and they throw Islamophobia out. But as I've said many times, you can see the consequences of Muslim anti-Semitism all over the world. You can see it in our own cities. And to get an idea of its toxicity, you've got to imagine that if the history of Christianity would be better or worse if, instead of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus had called for the eradication of the Jews. To understand the problem of Muslim anti-Semitism, you would have to, the only way you could play it out would be, imagine if Jesus Christ had, by his own hand, massacred a Jewish tribe. And would the history of Christianity have been more anti-Semitic or less anti-Semitic if that's been at the foundations? And the answer, of course, is more.
Yeah.
And that's just a problem that is so big and so deep, and most people don't want to go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
To me, this is very up close and personal. As you can see, these two fingers are no longer functional. This is gone. This is not functional. What happened to my fingers? On April 27, 2019, a 19-year-old white supremacist American boy burst into our synagogue with the AR-15. We are the second synagogue in U.S. history to have had a mass shooting at rgpoway, the synagogue that my wife and I built. He shot and killed Lori Lynn Gilbert K. right in front of my eyes. And then he aimed a rifle at me. 4 bullets came my way, shot my 2 fingers, but the rest of me survived as I turned around to bring the children to safety. In the aftermath of this shooting, after he has surrendered, I was told that his parents took him to a church in Escondido, a Baptist church, where the priests used to talk about how the Jews are the Christ killers. That is what he was fed as a child. And this is the end result. When he decided to come that day, on April 27, 2019, to rgpoway, in northern town of San Diego, with the AR-15, with enough ammunition to kill all of us. Yes, indeed, anti-Semitism, when it comes from the pulpit, it has a whole different effect. As Mr. Douglas Murray says, for some reason, the world accepts the Muslims, clerics, talking about anti-Semitism and annihilating the Jewish people without any impunity. This needs to stop. The world needs to be able to stand up to it and say enough is enough. The world has shown its ugly head of anti-Semitism once again. It's just like back in the 1930s. Haven't we learned our lesson? Hasn't the world learned the lesson? So let's pray and hope that we can turn the page of history and realizing that we are all created in God's image and we all have a right to live. We all have a right to coexist. God's intent of this world is that we should all live in peace together. We all carry God's image upon us. So let's find what we have more in common than what separates us. Just because we have different religions, different theologies, it doesn't make us any better or different. It's how we act. And our actions is about life and living, supporting life. Our religion is based on the living, trying to preserve life, trying to promote life, trying to bring as much life to the world. And we need to conquer, and we need to shut down the death cult of the religions that's all about death. Let's pray, and we hope that that happens very soon, speedily in our days. God bless you. God loves you.